Many countries fought many wars in one region, all for oil. The US has been heavily involved in the Middle East for a long time. The reason? A big chunk of their military budget wasn't just for show, a lot of it was about oil. But guess what? The good news is that the US is slowly moving away from relying so much on traditional oil providers. Why? Because America is learning to produce its own energy. Now, let's figure out why the US got hooked on foreign oil in the first place. Some might think it's because their own sources, like in Texas and Alaska, couldn't keep up with the demand. But that's not the whole story. When you import something instead of making it at home, you free up some energy for other things. It made sense for the US to let other countries handle the energy stuff while they focused on high-end manufacturing and tech. But there's a downside. This approach often made the US get tangled up in the politics of other countries. To keep oil prices down, the US sometimes had to deal with messy situations in foreign lands. And this wasn't always great for them. Now, the good part. The US is starting to break free from this reliance on foreign oil. They're turning to themselves for energy needs. But how did they get here? Let's rewind to 1973. The Middle East was in chaos, and the US faced an oil embargo. Gas prices skyrocketed, and the US realized depending on other countries for energy was a big problem. So, in 1973, President Nixon launched Project Independence, make the US energy self-sufficient by 1980. They planned nuclear power plants, slower speed limits, and more public transportation. But it didn't quite work out. By 1979, dependence on foreign oil was almost 50%. Jump to the 2000s. The Bush administration tried to tackle this by any means. They even invaded Iraq in 2003, accused by many of being an oil grab. But here's the twist. This invasion set the stage for a revolution in US domestic oil production. Fast forward to 2022, the US was producing more oil than they consumed, exporting more for the first time since 1952. How did they do it? The shale revolution and fracking technology allowed the US to tap into their own resources. Now, they're more energy independent than ever. But here's the tricky part. Are they really independent? It's not a straightforward answer. To understand, we need to talk about crude oil. The US produces enough, but it's not the right type. They can't refine it all because their refineries are set up for the kind of oil they use to import. Changing this would be expensive and take years. Also, crude oil isn't the only player. There's natural gas too. Technically, if you add oil and natural gas together, the US is a net exporter. But if you only look at crude oil, they're still importing. Why? Because the US has different types of oil, and their refineries aren't fully equipped for the domestic kind. So, even if they're more independent, they still need to import. But that's okay for now. The US has learned from past disruptions and is investing in renewable energy. Slowly, they're moving away from oil dependence. So, true energy independence might still be a goal, but for now, they're on the right path. Thanks for watching.